Hello, my name is Janelle Denzen. I work for Cohio and support the Balance Estate HMIS. For some background, the data quality reports in use today stem from the old data quality reports that were built by Cohio for HPRP. Since then, they have evolved to accommodate the changing needs of the COC and HUD's data standards. This video is to go along with the release of a new version of the data quality report. However, since we've never actually done any kind of video training on the data quality reports, this video will include a walkthrough of both data quality reports. The reports are split into two, one covering assessment data and entry-exit data, and the other covering household issues and service transactions issues. This was done to keep both reports smaller and quicker to run. The reason it is important to use these data quality reports to check your data quality instead of using the APR or any other report available is that these reports are built specifically for our implementation. They look at all program stays for each client, unlike the APR. They distinguish between clients that exited prior to October 1st, 2014 and those that are required to have the new data elements. And they check more issues than any of the other available reports do. So let's get to it and take a look. First, we're going to look at the data quality, entry, exits, and assessments report. It is by far the biggest report and will contain the bulk of any issues you may have. So I'm going to demonstrate how to run it. You're going to click Art, and then Public, Balance Estate, Data Quality, and Performance, and then Monthly, because these reports should be run monthly. So we're going to click the magnifying glass and go to View Report. Now, once the visibility has been opened, we're not going to need to use EDA Provider anymore. I know in the past we have trained that you must, every time you run these reports, you must fill out the EDA Provider and the provider prompt. However, now that we have opened the data, we do not need to use that anymore. So I'm just going to run it on a dummy provider that we've created. And I have PDFs of the report on live data that we can go through. And then we're going to click Run Query. And if you'll notice here, on the Additional Information tab, it'll tell you what you selected for the provider, the start date that you picked, the end date, the effective date, and these two dates should match. It'll say what you picked for EDA Provider, and it'll give you which entry-exit type you picked. So it's helpful to have this because when you're requesting help from the HMIS department, it's very helpful for us to know what you, how you ran the report so that we can help you figure out if there's issues with the client or issues with the report or issues in how you actually ran the report. So anyway, it takes a little while to load, but that's how you run it. And once it comes up, you will want to check that all of your prompts were entered correctly. That should be your first step. And as you can see here, the report is divided into various tabs. There's a summary page, and then there's various other tabs that sort of describe issues. So you can see here that I chose the provider. My start date was the beginning of 2014. My end date and my effective date match each other, which is right. Nowadays, EDA Provider should say default provider. And entry-exit type is HUD. And then it gives you your provider again and what your total client count is. So we're just going to I'm going to close this out and we're going to look at some PDFs of reports that I ran so that we can see what exactly, let's see, some of these reports can look like and what the new version looks like. So as you can see here, I've for the most part fixed the summary page, which has been broken. I am waiting to hear back from Bowman on some of these issues, and hopefully those will be sorted out by the time this video is released and by the time the visibility is opened. But if not, I'm sure the folks here can sort it out, or it could just be that it's not going to happen. But a couple of things I want to point out about the Summary tab. Notice that there are two sections on the Summary tab. One lists all the issues that are definitely data quality issues. These should all remain free and clear of any clients whenever it is run monthly. The second section is separated out because it is looking at possible issues, things that might be data quality issues, or things that may just be either odd but true situations. This is a very important distinction because we do not want users aiming to get 0 clients here. We want true and accurate data, even if it's reflecting negative outcomes or program management issues or just weird situations. We want to see and understand these things, so it's important to not feel like this section should be all zeros. We don't want high numbers either. And we're going to go over this, like why this is so high, and those are definitely mostly all problems. So as I've mentioned before, these reports are meant to be run monthly so that bad habits do not perpetuate and the data quality is always at an acceptable place. If you have not been doing this, it is very important that you start, especially now that visibility is open. As clients come into your program from other programs, they may bring with them some sub-assessment records that need ending, or other issues that may cause your client to show up with an unexpected data quality problem. Once you have run your report, if you have a lot of data to correct, I recommend first checking for duplicate entry exits, questionable housing data, and wrong entry exit type. The reasons these three stand out is these kinds of errors affect high-level issues that affect whether or not your client will show in the correct reports. When a client has a duplicate entry exit, for example, one of them could be missing an exit date, and that client will continue to show across all of your bed utilization reports, in APRs, in the AHAR, in project evaluation, etc. Sometimes correcting the duplicate entry exit will solve all the possible problems on a client, so doing this first saves you time. Questionable housing data mostly applies to rapid rehousing and prevention projects. Sometimes users accidentally enter a client that should be prevention into their rapid rehousing project. That client may be showing on other tabs as having multiple other problems, but simply fixing the client's project name can make them fall off the prevention report entirely. The user can fix the client when they run the report on the rapid rehousing project. Wrong entry exit type, incorrect entry exit type here, will affect whether or not a client shows in any reporting. All the reporting I mentioned earlier depends on the entry exit type being correct. If you entered a household perfectly, but the entry exit type is incorrect, none of it will show anywhere except on this tab. It won't even show in any other tabs on this report until this is fixed. That is why it is important to correct this kind of error first. Most projects will not have any clients with any of these problems. Most issues will be in the missing and DKR tabs. And we'll get to that in a second here. That's these here, the missing client information. And the non-cash, and the missing income, and missing health insurance, disabilities, especially after April 20th. So let's go through those. Now this report, this is a PDF that I have created by sort of cobbling together multiple people's data quality reports, looking for for providers with various different kinds of issues so that we could have one big report that looks like everything's wrong. So I've redacted the name of the provider and all of the client IDs here. And then the other thing I wanted to point out is up on the top right of every tab, it tells you whether or not you're looking at a tab that indicates whether it's a definite data quality problem or if it's a possible data quality problem. And some of them are mixed because you have don't know refused, also with missing, so it's not always as cut and dry as that. But anyway, this is your basic missing page, well, one of them. This looks at missing name, social security number, date of birth, gender, race, ethnicity, residence prior, and veteran. These are all very basic. They all need to be corrected. If you see anything here that says missing. Now the DKR means that the client didn't know the answer to the question or they refused to give it. This is a lot of missing data for social security number. So if you have this much don't know refused data in one field, you might want to see if there's like a prevailing issue on the data collection end, because that, you know, the odd don't know refused is expected, but that much of it, there's probably something else going on. So you would just want to make sure that those were actually the client really didn't know and they really refused. And if they did, that's fine, and they can stay here. But these missings need to be sorted out. Okay, and then the next page is I think it's the missing DKR2 tab in the report. Yeah, this is the tab name down here. Now this looks at, when the new data standards came out, HUD added a lot of new data elements to collect data on. Many of them are here. You can see here that these were answered, but they didn't reconcile with other information that was entered into the same assessment. And then for this, at exit, on the exit assessment, there's a question the rapid rehousing projects have to answer, and they have to update it at exit. So this probably said no, like in permanent housing was no at exit. And being that the whole point of the rapid rehousing project is to make sure that someone's in permanent housing at exit, it's possible that they weren't in permanent housing at exit, but it's just notifying you here that there are some questionable ones that you might need to go and switch it to yes at exit. So, and this is the SSVF tab, and this just found a couple of missing theater of operations. I think for the theater operations, you have to answer all of the operations questions for this to not return a missing. And then, okay, so missing income. This is a tab that has changed a lot from the version that you are used to. I've added a lot of new information, new columns here. And it's basically meant to help you figure out what's going on. So I'm just going to go over real quick to the training site because I want to demonstrate, I just want to show how the income data collection is so that we can talk about where the data that you're saving goes and how it turns up in the database. So I think I created someone, yeah. These are fake clients on the training site. And I just want to go in to look at how we're collecting income data. Okay, so you can see here, under the income subheading, there's 3 actual things to do. There's this drop down, income from any source. That means at this moment, are they getting any income from any source? And your choices are yes, no, don't know, refused, and data not collected. The next field is the total monthly income. So if your answer up here is no, then your answer here is going to be 0. If your answer here is yes, your answer here is going to be not 0, something else. So these two fields can be answered any number of combinations. So this is one of the things that the data quality report looks at. And then to make things more complex, there's also the subassessments, where you can go in and add subassessments, and you can choose a source and add an income amount. And for every source that the client is getting, they have one of these records. And then you mark whether they're getting it or not. And I know there's the HUD verification, which for some reason is not showing on the training site today. You can see it better like that, but anyway, this has to be answered yes if they're getting that source. And then your start date and your end date. The start date is when they starting receiving the income source, and the end date is your best guess as to when they stopped getting that income at that amount. So, and these can stack. You can add as many of these as you need to indicate all the different sources that they're getting and the amounts. So the more that you add here I'll just demonstrate here. So the more that you add here, they just keep stacking like this, right? And so your total monthly income here should be 600 because you have 400 from SSDI and 200 from earned income. And this should be yes. So I'll just go ahead and put that in. Oh, goodness. Okay. So this would be a correct way of doing it. So that's just sort of to show you the three sort of moving parts that are happening on the data collection side of income. And then, so you're going to contrast that with, let's see, with how the data looks on a data quality report. And you're going to have your client IDs. So this client, for instance, they were marked as no for receiving any income and entry. However, they have one source of income that had a yes, and it had $1,500 for the amount. So this column here, subassessment okay at entry, that would be no, because you have an income source, but you have no over here. And then we're also going to check the field. This is the total monthly income field. You'll sometimes hear people call it the TMI field. So this field is also included on this report. So this says total monthly income data quality, and that would be either okay or incorrect. So these are okay, and it's only comparing it to the yes-nos. So it's 0 and it's no, so this TMI is okay. This says they have $721, but they have a no, so it's incorrect. So basically this data block here shows you sort of how your income data is looking. It also pulls whenever your total monthly income from the subassessments, so that's like if we looked at this, your total monthly income from the subassessments would be 600. If you compare that number to the number in the TMI field and they don't equal each other, they will also show here. And that has never been the case. We have never had that on the data quality report before because we could never trust that data as it is anyway. But now that we've opened visibility, we're going to be able to trust it theoretically as long as everybody gets all this cleaned up. So this is the biggest way that the data quality report has changed. And then this data block does the same exact thing, except it's looking at the income data at exit. So you can see here everything is okay with this client here, except that they have $800 showing up in the sub-assessments, but they have a 0 in the TMI field. And this says no on top of that. So there's something going on there, and it's probably to do with opening up the visibility. So this is what is going to help you correct your data and how you'll be able to make sure that everything is working in order together and makes sense. Okay, so moving on to non-cash. Now the non-cash data collection is a bit easier than income because we don't have that total monthly income field. Really all we're trying to match up is if this is no, then you shouldn't have any yes records here in the sub-assessments. And if this is yes, you should have more than 0 sub-assessment records that are yes. So that's all this looks at. It just gives you the number of non-cash benefits that are listed, and you can see here in every case these are reversed. So there's a non-cash benefit, but benefits at entry is no. And this one it says yes, there's benefits, but there aren't any sub-assessments to go along with that. So this was pretty straightforward. And same thing with the non-cash at exit. So missing health insurance is going to be the same thing. It's going to look for if it's covered. If they're covered, then they should have at least one coverage in the sub-assessment. And if they have a sub-assessment record that's a yes, then this should be yes. So these two showed up as needing some attention. And this is the same thing, but just the data is at exit. And so the difference between the data at entry and the data at exit, the way that you access those assessments are through the correct pencils. So I'll demonstrate that really quick. So this one is health insurance at exit. If I wanted to fix something that I was thinking is not correct at exit, I would go into their exit pencil and then I would see their exit assessment. And anything I do in here would be true as of that exit date. So, and then same thing if it was something to do with the bad data at entry, like from this data block, then I would go into the entry pencil to check on that. And then I would come up with the entry assessment. Okay, so moving on. The next tab is missing disabilities. So this has changed also quite a bit. I divided it out. Instead of having everything listed in one table, I split out what we were looking at, basically. So this first one, data congruity, is only checking to see if your yes-no matches the number of disabilities that you have marked yes. This one, for instance, has got to be wrong. I don't know that any of our clients have all the disabilities. So that's probably a mistake, on top of the fact that they have a no here. So it was probably meant to be all no's. So they would need to go fix that. And for all these, they have a no, but then they have disabilities listed, and they have yes and no disabilities listed. This is all this is checking to see, is if the yes/no matches the subassessments. And then the second data block looks at data completeness. So as it explains up here, the disability types of physical, medical, other, or dual diagnosis are not a HUD disability type. These used to be choices, and they're no longer. The problem is these answers don't pull into reporting because they're not into HUD reporting anyway. So when you see these, what you have to do is have to go back to the client and pick the correct HUD answer to go instead of it. And the instructions on how to do that are right here. So that's what this means. And then this over here is checking to see if the if-yes questions are answered, and I'll show you what that looks like. So basically, if we go into a disability subassessment record, we have disability type. We can choose that, whatever it is. Well, let's choose a different one. And then the disability determination has to be yes for it to show in reporting. And then you have to answer, if yes, you need to answer this question, because this is actually a very important one, because we use this question to determine if the client can be considered chronic. So that one is a very important one. You also have to answer this one, and not this one because it's path only, and not this one because it's path only, and you have to answer this one also. So, and this one you do not need to answer anymore because it's sort of redundant to this question here. So that is what this is referring to here, this if yes questions answered. So this basically has, the client ID and when they entered or exited, and whether or not those questions were answered. And if it says NA, that is because the client exited prior to 10-1 when those questions didn't even exist in the database. So, the data quality report pays attention to whether or not your clients are beholden to the new data standards or if they are not. So, and if you wanted to go in here while you're in here correcting these things, if you want to go ahead and answer those, that'd be great, but you do not have to. The interims tab, this gives you an idea of how many clients you have that have interims that are coming up or that have not enough interims saved for them. This does not really apply for any programs that do not keep clients over a year. So if your project doesn't keep clients for longer than a year, then you probably wouldn't see any clients on this tab. But if you do, you might see clients that land here that says when they should have a new interim done or when their next review is coming up or whatever. Duplicate entry exits. We sort of talked about this before, and you can see here this provider has 3 clients, 2 are probably in the same household, that share an entry date. They have they each have 2 entries on the same date to the same program. So that's called a duplicate entry exit, and you would just need to go to the client, and I suppose I could do this really quick. Just go to the client, go to the entry exit tab, and if let's say one of these was a duplicate, you would just click the trash can. You want to make sure that you're deleting the correct one. And then if there's multiple people in that entry exit, after you delete it, you would want to come up here, choose the other one, like the other person in the household, and delete it off of them and continue to go that way. Just loop until you've hit all the household members. That's how you do that. Future entry exits. This doesn't really happen that often, but this is basically just a catch in case you accidentally fat finger a year or something, and you have a client with an exit date of in 2016 or something. This would catch that, and that way you could go and correct that. Also, we were finding that some people were future exiting people because they figured they might leave on that day. That's not really the best practice, and we shouldn't do it that way because you don't know exactly when. I mean, it's very important that we get exactly how long a client was in your program. So this is what that is for. Now, incorrect entry-exit type. This is another one that we sort of talked about before. It's very important. Basically, this provider has 14 clients that they entered in 2014 under the wrong entry-exit type. They used HPRP, which HPRP doesn't exist anymore. We cannot control what entry-exit types are available for clients. We do not have access to that list. So I think HPRP might still even be in there. I'm not sure. But it certainly was in early 2014. So these are clearly wrong and need to be switched to HUD. So that's what this report is for, and it would be really important to get those 14 clients moved over. Okay, so questionable housing data at entry. This is another really important one that especially for prevention and rapid rehousing projects. Like some of these, so if somebody is in a hotel or motel paid for without emergency shelter voucher, that person should be in prevention, not rapid rehousing. So this is a rapid rehousing project. I know you can't see that, but it is. And so this client would actually need to be moved out of this provider and into another one. So fixing this would basically take this client off of this report entirely. Same thing with staying or living with families or friends. All of those should be prevention. This one, other, living in van, that should be rapid rehousing. However, other is incorrect. It should be place not meant for habitation. Hotel or motel, yeah, all of these should be prevention. This is hotel or motel, so that should be prevention. So anyway, this tells you a lot, and it helps you make sure that you're entering your clients into the correct program. And this is date of birth is the same as the entry date. That is usually a data quality issue. It is certainly possible that someone's date of birth is the same as their entry date, but it's very, very rare, and it's usually a data quality issue that just needs to be corrected. So, and then this is the, I was talking about the last page that shows you what provider prompts you chose. So that wraps up looking at the first data quality report. I hope this is helpful to people. I'm sure it's going to bring up a lot of questions. I'm going to go ahead and close this and go to the households and services, sort of the second data quality report. This summary page has never actually been broken, so that's been good. It's also, just like the other one, divided into data quality issues and possible data quality issues. And a lot of these errors are pretty rare, like the mismatched household IDs. This means that a client, I'll show you. When you have a client and a household and you attach a household to an entry-exit, and then you add a service, let's say they have multiple households. If you add a service and you pick a different household, and that's not the same one that was referred to in the entry exit, and this one, then it'll show up on this report. And because that means that the services were probably not attached to the correct household. Or it could be the entry exit that wasn't attached to the correct household. Anyway, if you get something on this and you don't understand it, please give us a call. This is definitely one of the more advanced problems to understand. It took me months to really understand why that was a big deal. So children-only households, that's clearly a problem, and you can find this as an error in your APR also. It lists those. So that's what this one shows up. Missing head of household, this doesn't really happen that often, although this provider had a sort of spate of this problem, to where these households didn't have anybody designated as the head of household. So this would just show you which client ID to go into, and you can just modify that to fix those. Needs without services, that's usually caused by if you create a service and then you want to delete it and you delete the service without deleting the need, that can leave like a stray need in the background, and that doesn't work well for reporting. Service date before program entry, that also doesn't work well for reporting. You can see here the service happened at 3 o'clock, but they didn't enter the program until 3:36. So that would need to be fixed. Active needs and services, these are services that the user left the need status as identified instead of closed or fully met. And basically it just leaves a bunch of services active, and that's also not good for reporting. Different housing statuses and household. This is not an issue anymore. After HPRP went away, this hasn't really been an issue, but we kept it in here because sometimes it helps us find anomalies where there is a mistake made. But this is not really usually a problem, because sometimes people did come from one housing status. People in the same in the same household came from different housing statuses. That's perfectly legitimate now that HPRP is gone. Multiple households and services. This just means that, like, for some services that are attached to an entry exit, there's different household IDs. So this one, for instance, these services were not attached to the rest of the household. That's what this shows, is that somebody created these service transactions, but they forgot to check all the household members. And then this is the end of that report. So the really important ones on this report are missing head of household and children-only households. I think those are really the most important ones, and why you would want to run this report on each of your projects. Okay, so I've gone through how to run the reports, what they are sort of structured like, and sort of what the changes to the report have been since the change in visibility that you're going to want to run, especially the first one, the data quality, entry, exits, and assessments one, whenever April 20th comes along, to make sure that your income tab looks okay. Well, it's not going to look okay. I'll tell you that. It's not going to look okay. But you're going to, this will help you find who needs to be corrected. So I hope this has been helpful, and thank you. Send any questions to hmis@cohio.org.